Ladies and gentlemen, Binnall of America!
And now, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Tim Binnall.
No commercials, no subscriptions, no network, no rules. And at the end of the day, my friends, no comparison. Welcome to another edition of BOA The Revival. Should be a really interesting program we've got on tap for tonight. Our guest reached out to us and asked us to come on Binnall of America to talk about some of the stuff he's worked on in the past. And it's quite a selection of stuff. He's put out a ton of podcasts under 3 different banners, primarily now The Devil Within. He also was the co-host of Criminal Mischief with Caroline Osorio, and he previously hosted a show on the Forrest Fenn treasure hunt, X Marks the Spot. So a lot of stuff. He's covered a lot of stuff that I'm interested in, a lot of stuff that we've talked about over the years here on Binnall of America. So should be a lot of fun digging into some of these cases, some of these stories. He is Branden Morgan. Welcome to Binnall of America, Branden.
Thanks, Tim. Happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
So with the first-time guest, we generally start out the bio, the background. You know, who is Branden Morgan? How'd you get mixed up in all this? How'd you wind up with 3 podcasts? That's crazy.
Totally by accident, to be honest. I was an actor for a long time. I'm from New Jersey. I started acting in New York when I was a kid, moved to LA when I'm 18, pursued acting and theater work for a long, long time. Then I started writing. I wound up with a show at Sony. I was on the Sony lot for, almost 18 months. That show was unceremoniously canceled. I was basically told, get the hell out of here. And then by that point, I'm mid-40s with no college degree and a house and 2 kids, and I needed a job. My agent submitted an old screenplay of mine to a media startup. They liked it. They called me in and they said, okay, we want to do this as a podcast. This was in 2018. And I said, yeah, 100%. Love to. And then I went home and had to figure out what a podcast was. I wasn't a podcast listener, or obviously not a podcaster. And so I was basically left unsupervised to create a 10-episode podcast about a murder that happened in my hometown when I was 14 years old. He was a contemporary of mine. I knew this kid, and one night, apparently he just snapped, and he murdered his mom with his Boy Scout knife, and then committed suicide in the woods. And the investigation revealed that he had been involved in a satanic cult, and no one knew about it. And so the town just went freaking crazy, and it was a Catholic family, and the Catholic Church swept in, and they said it was demonic possession and nothing to see here, kind of. And there were a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of things that didn't make sense, especially with the state of, his name was Tommy Sullivan, the state of Tommy's body when he was discovered didn't make sense. And so that story, it bothered me, and it stuck with me for the rest of my life. And I had written so many different versions of it, as kind of, to be honest, as kind of, therapy, to try and figure out why a kid that could have been me, right? He lived down the block from me. I knew him. We played basketball, whatever, could do this, and then that it wound up as a podcast was the last thing I expected. But then a series of events, of really fortuitous events, kind of happened for the show to find the audience that it did. The media company that I was employed by had the same agency as a big podcast network called Wondery. So we got to pitch Wondery the show. And it just so happened that summer, Wondery had 3 different shows kind of fall out of their scheduling. So they just needed content that was finished, and my show just happened to be completely done. So they basically picked it up sight unseen. They marketed the shit out of it, really clever marketing. They're the best at it. and the show opened number 1 and then wound up being the number 5 show of 2021. And so now here I am with a podcast without still really understanding the business. And the company that I was working for hired me to then run their whole network. And so now I've got to be delivering shows. We had to deal with iHeart. So now I have to deliver a show every month to iHeart. And so I basically learned how to be a podcaster while I was being a podcaster. So it was real baptism by fire, but it worked out. You know, it was as creative as I've ever been in my life. I had some great people that I was working with. That's where X Marks the Spot came from. That's where Criminal Mischief came from. I did another show there called Art Fraud. So then, as happens in Hollywood, the company I was working for ran out of money. And so then I was on my own with my properties and now I'm kind of off doing my own thing.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
And how many shows are you putting out a week now with all these different vehicles?
Well, excuse me. X Marks the Spot was like a one-shot deal.
Right.
I think we did 10 episodes of that and then a bunch of bonus stuff because we kind of integrated a treasure hunt within a story about a treasure hunt.
Right.
And that was just a really, pardon my French, fucked up world to splash around in for a while. The Forrest Fenn treasure hunt community
they're a wild bunch.
Oh God, man! So I needed to get as far away from them as I could after about a year, you know. So that show was kind of sunsetted. I might want to get back into that world, but for now, we're doing 2 episodes a week of Criminal Mischief, and I'm doing 2 episodes a week of The Devil Within.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's a lot of content. That's it is. That's pretty rough.
It is
tough, I guess. Not really rough, but
yeah, it's a lot of work. But you know, I really enjoy. I have a partner on Criminal Mischief in Carolyn Osorio who does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of research and writing on that show. But then with Devil Within, I'm a one man show with that, with regard to research and writing and production and music and all of that. So but I enjoy it.
Now, I've noticed, I was looking over the archive of The Devil Within. I noticed it starts out kind of true crime, but then as it goes along in the years and stuff, you start to weave in some more paranormal topics that you've covered over the last few years. I was like noticing that it kind of like all of a sudden Bigfoot would pop up or UFOs or something like that. I was like, oh, okay, so this is kind of like a little bit of a grab bag of different stuff here as it evolves into what it is today.
Exactly. And if for anybody out there who's familiar with season 1 of the podcast, all of those elements were kind of integral to the telling of that story, right? There was the true crime, the straight true crime aspect of a murder suicide. There was it starts kind of trespassing on the paranormal with all of the demonic possession stuff. Yeah. Then I kind of wove in, kind of an urban legend of the Jersey Devil with an origin tale of the Jersey Devil. So without really doing it on purpose, I kind of touched a lot of the different aspects of the paranormal and of the occult and of true crime. So just about everything that I do is still pretty loyal to that original 10 episodes. Luckily, I can hit a lot of these topics and still not turn off my listeners. So I've been lucky with that.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting because there's some crossover. You know, we do some true crime shows here every now and again, but it's like, there's definitely distinct audiences between the paranormal and true crime.
There are, and I was a total novice when I got into it, and so the interesting thing about the story of Tommy Sullivan is that it starts off as a really straight up kind of true crime story about an obviously troubled 14-year-old kid who had immersed himself not on purpose, but through his parents and the town in Catholicism from when he was born. right? And then he was a straight A student, and he was an all area wrestler. If you're familiar with Jersey, wrestling is like a religion there. It's more popular than football. And so this kid really checked all the boxes as like the perfect kid, right? Straight A student, altar boy, all area wrestler, right? And no one noticed that he was about to break under all of that pressure. And the only release valve that he had for the rebellious nature of any normal teenager was, okay, I'm going to align myself with the exact opposite of what everybody expects of me, and I'm going to just be a Satanist. And he changed his taste in music, and he changed how he dressed, and he got all new friends. And this was all in 6 weeks. At Thanksgiving, he was the normal kid. By January 9th, he was a satanic murder suicide victim. Okay.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was really, really, really strange. And then, so all of that lays out really well for a true crime show. But then by about episode 5, all of the facts run out, and we're left with a lot of these mysteries that it's still an open case today because of his body. He had taken that Boy Scout knife that he had just killed his mother with, right? He goes into the woods across the street from his house so he can see the front door, because his intention was to kill his whole family, his dad, his little brother as well, by lighting the house on fire.
Jesus.
Yeah, right? So he goes across the street to watch his handiwork. The fire alarm wakes his dad up. They put the fire out pretty easily. They call the cops. My wife's missing. My kid's missing. At first, they thought it was a kidnapping. Then they find the wife's body in the basement, and they're like, oh, shit, some murderer took my son. And they didn't find Tommy until the next morning. So he's across the street. It was snowing the night before, fresh blanket of snow everywhere. All right. Yeah. When they find him, first thing he had done was he'd taken the knife and he tried to slit his wrist.
Yeah.
But he went in, and the blade went in between the two bones of his forearm, and he just kind of messed it all up and cut all the tendons.
God.
Right. I know. Right. But hold on. It gets so much worse to me. So then he takes the knife. This is what the medical examiner and the police would have us believe. Okay. He takes the knife and he jams it under his left ear and then drags it all the way across to his right ear, severing his spine. He basically turns himself into a fucking Pez dispenser. Okay.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
All right. Blood spray everywhere. The cops show up. There's only one set of footprints going to the body in the fresh snow, remember? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, paramedics show up. The first thing they say is, my God, who did this to him? The cops are like, oh, he did it himself. And they're like, no way. He only had the use of one hand. He wasn't strong. And he was
because he
106 pound wrestler. Okay. Medical examiner, same first question. Wow, who did this to him? Coroner, who did this to him? Like, the stories don't add up. All right.
Right.
So then it leads to, over the 35 years since this has happened, right? It comes down to 3 possibilities of what actually happened. That there was another person there who did this, and they were really, really good at it and walked in the same footprints in Tommy's shoe, like whatever, to hide to hide their activity. Okay. The second one is that there were members of the satanic cult that had some way of basically affecting the same end as the single person would have done. They think it was his dad. Okay. Second thing is members of the satanic cult did it. The third thing is that it was demonic possession, and some type of entity granted him the power to do this to himself. That's what the church would have us believe. Right. Okay. So, and we never knew. In my town, it turned into like Footloose after that. Proms were canceled, no dancing, parents going through all of your music and throwing out my Scorpions and AC/DC t-shirts, like everything. And so, as a storyteller, and I'm not a journalist, I'm not bound by any ethical journalistic standards, right, that you would expect from a lot of these bigger true crime shows. I'm a storyteller. So, I told a story about the devil within. About the Jersey Devil, as possessed the kid and crawled out through his neck and blah, blah, whatever, right? All of this stuff. Yeah. And so I got a lot of blowback from the hardcore true crime community, but then I gained a lot of listeners from the more horror paranormal community. So that was basically a wash.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And we're up to almost 20 million downloads now from season 1. So, I mean, the show did very, very well. And the weekly show is chugging along, man. So,
yeah, well, the true crime community is pretty wild as it is. Talk about the Forrest Fenn folks. I mean, the true crime community is pretty wild.
Agreed.
It's this sort of a weird, like, I mean, I'm kind of a true crime buff myself, but I'm not like really. I don't listen to true crime. I don't even listen to paranormal podcasts, mind you, but I don't really listen to true crime shows either, even though there's tons of them and everything. But it is. Yeah. I have heard the criticism people say. And I don't necessarily agree with that because I am a true crime fan. But that, like, this kind of glamorizes the true crime, the explosion in true crime media in the last, like, 10 years, let's say. It's, like, very exploitative of these tragedies, in a sense. I mean, I can kind of see that, but it's like, this is what people want to see. I mean, I don't know what, like, if it wasn't super popular, then it wouldn't be everywhere all the time. Like, there's, like, 2 or 3 cable channels alone that are just, like, straight true crime all the time.
True. I think the major beef was really something that was out of my control. I'm not trying to pass the buck. I'm fully responsible for all of my content. But the way that Wondery promoted the show was on their network on a bunch of their very popular true crime shows. But then at the same time, they drafted off of, in a marketing sense, one of the Conjuring movies came out that summer as well.
Yeah.
The Devil Made Me Do It. And so they advertised there as well. So it's not like they were trying to deceive anybody, but but that was the fact that there were a lot of feed drops on their big true crime shows. I think people were expecting more of a straight true crime show.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And listen, in their defense, the first 2 or 3 episodes, it lays out as an investigative true crime show. So I
wasn't really specifically talking about your show per se. I just mean sort of the genre of true crime in general is kind of like, it's people who get it, and people who don't get it are like, okay, that's you know what I mean. They're like, oh, I don't really. It's distasteful to them, which I guess I can understand. But to me, it's just like, this is what it is. It's mysteries and shit that people like.
Right. And I took the criticism to heart. And when my next show was X Marks the Spot, I towed the line on that. I told the story. I made no suppositions. I interviewed people, had a ton of fun with it. Yeah. And that was a really interesting show with really interesting people. And we're never going to know the answer to that. I promise you, we're never going to know where the treasure was. Because I know the guy who knows the answer, and he is still playing possum with all of those poor followers, promising, oh, next month I'm going to be a big reveal. And it's never anything. We're just going to have to live with not knowing the ultimate resting place of that treasure chest. So.
Yeah, you mean Jack Stoof, who was Stu F or however.
Well, it's Jack. Jack will never say anything, or he would have by now. But the guy who knows, I know fairly well. He invited me to his house in Santa Fe. Is Shiloh Fenn? Shiloh Old, excuse me.
Okay, the grandson.
The grandson, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very well versed in the Forrest Fenn treasure story.
Yeah, so Shiloh has all of the answers. He's got all of the answers, right?
Yeah.
He hosted me. We had a great time in Santa Fe. He reached out about halfway through the season he had very, very nice words about how I was treating the memory of his grandfather and the treasure hunt. And he invited me out, and we had a great time. And we were kind of dancing around each other about maybe developing it as a television show. And then I think he took a different deal with Netflix, but then still nothing has happened there.
Yeah.
And I think Shiloh, and I love the guy, I think he just really enjoys having a little bit of control over this group of people and kind of stringing them along, much like his grandfather did the whole time.
Right.
His grandfather was a master of saying a lot without saying anything at all, and I mean, man, it was a masterclass in stringing people along. And people bought it because they're like, oh, Forrest and I are friends, and he's inviting me out to the bookstore, and we're going to hang out and do stuff. And they would leave knowing not one iota more than they knew before the meeting.
Right, exactly. And for folks who are unfamiliar with the Forrest Fenn story, I'll give it to you in a nutshell. Forrest Fenn was, let's call him an eccentric art dealer. He found out he had cancer in 2010-ish, wrote a book called Thrill of the Chase, where he laid out in a poem that he had hidden a treasure in the American Rocky Mountains somewhere. And then it turned into like a phenomenon. And for 10 years, people were searching for the Forrest Fenn treasure. It turned into like a whole community of people. There was, there's a study done that suggested it was like 1 million people that had at least partaken in some form of the treasure hunt. But thousands and thousands of people who made the trip went out there to look for the treasure. Finally, summer of 2010, this guy, Jack Stoof or Stuff or however.
Stoof. I think it's Stoof.
Stoof.
Yeah.
It's Stuef for folks who are like, Binnall, can't you pronounce the guy's name right? Hey, you try. It's Stuef. I don't know. I'm doing my best. So Jack. Now I fucked it up again because I don't remember what you said. But Jack, we'll just call him Jack.
Rhymes with proof.
Oh, there you go. Jack Stoof found the treasure ostensibly. Well, I want to ask you about that in a minute.
No, sure.
He found the treasure. Forrest Fenn's like, oh, he found the treasure. The treasure hunt's over. Forrest Fenn then up and dies like 3 months later without, and then he's like, well, we don't want to tell anyone where it was.
Yep.
And that was like 5 years ago, almost now. And then the community, I mean, it has kind of dwindled down to like the last few diehards and people who were like kind of bitter that it's over. And as far as I know, it's like they've narrowed it down nearly down to somewhere like in Yellowstone. That's kind of my understanding of it. And then the treasure itself was auctioned off by piece about 3 or 4 years ago, much to my chagrin, because I had hoped that it would be on display somewhere or some eccentric would buy the whole thing in one lot. But now it's been spread to the wind. And, I wish I had gotten a piece of it, but I tried when they did the auction, and it was like the tiniest little piece went for like several $1,000s. And I'm like, well, fuck that, dude. I'll spend, I think my budget was like 500. I'm like, I'll buy one gold coin for like $500. And there was like nothing that even was under $1,000 at all. So it sold like crazy. So that's the Forrest Fenn story in a nutshell. 5 people, I believe, died in the hunt for it. A lot of pressure on Forrest to end it. That's where the controversy comes in. When the treasure hunt ended in 2020, people didn't believe it because he didn't give out Jack Stoof's name, and then Jack Stoof wanted to remain anonymous. Then Forrest Fenn died, and it was like, what the fuck is going on here? And a lot of people surmised or, theorized that because of all the pressure on Forrest Fenn that he faked the discovery of the treasure. And ironically, a lot of people kind of pointed the finger at this Shiloh, the grandson, as like if he was going to do it, Shiloh would have helped him and all this other shit. So that's kind of the whole deal. Go listen to X Marks the Spot, but I just gave it to you in about like 30 seconds. But that's the general gist of the Forrest Fenn treasure. Am I right? Correct.
100% correct. And the main reason why there are still so many diehards out there, an inordinate amount, given all of the information that's out there, is people are so attached to where they think the treasure was buried. They are married to it. They will not listen to anything other than that they are right about this. Okay. It's like a self-imposed kind of brainwashing. They were so invested emotionally, financially, spiritually invested in the fact that they solved it. Okay. That they refuse to believe that what Forrest and Jack said in their statement that it was in Yellowstone. Okay. Nope, absolutely not. And they parsed the words because unfortunately, Forrest did say, we agreed to reveal that the treasure was found in Yellowstone Park. Now, a normal person would take that statement to say, especially the words "we agreed to mean that this is all we're going to say. We're not going to give any more specifics. We agreed to say Yellowstone to put your guys' minds at ease. But what the community heard was, oh, they're in cahoots. They agreed to lie to us. Okay. To just feed us something because we know that the hunt is still going on. And that kind of thinking I needed to just get away from. I couldn't handle it anymore because by episode 9, it was a 9-episode show because there were 9 clues in the poem, right? And I had interviewed enough people and listened to enough accounts of, quote, boots on the ground people who were in there to come up with my own conclusion. What's most likely, okay? And 9 Mile Hole, in Yellowstone Park, across the Madison River, in, a pine thicket of aspen trees. And I went there. I took my family on vacation to Yellowstone with the express purpose of following the clues step by step to see if it worked in real life. And it really, really did. And I crossed the Madison River. I got a picture of myself in the river right here on my desk. And followed the clues and went right to the spot and stood on the spot. And you know what, Tim, I got closure and I felt great about it. And that was enough for me. And I felt a part of the community. I felt like I was doing right by Forrest's legacy and I was able to move on. And then I went and I sat down with Shiloh and we spent a lot of time together, and I was in Forrest's office and saw all of his amazing Native American artifacts and didn't try to get any answers out of Shiloh or anything. And that was it. And then I moved on, and I still get calls and emails from people in the community that think that I personally am in cahoots with Shiloh and that we have some strange agreement and that we're working on something and that we're going to reveal stuff. And I'll tell you, I don't know shit.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of the theory that there was shenanigans involved, that it was orchestrated, the discovery was orchestrated, essentially?
I don't think that at all. I don't think that at all. I think that Jack Stoof found it. I think he went after it scientifically and methodically. He had a grid of the aspen forest opposite 9 Mile Hole, and he was in that area for like 30 days, meticulously going block by block, like an archaeologist would. Okay, and he found it. And then he followed the protocol. He did what he was supposed to do. He called Forrest, said, I found it. This is where I found it. Forrest said, okay, I'm inviting you down to Santa Fe. Come with me. Bring the chest. Great. It's going to go into this safe in this bank, and we're going to work it all out because you have some tax stuff and there are some legal things, right, about finding something on, because there's rules about federal land
stuff on federal land.
Yeah, exactly. So they worked all of that out. That's exactly what you think happened is, I think, exactly what happened. Right. And Jack wanted the money. And as soon as the legal stuff went away and he was able to sell it, that's exactly what he did. And see you later. And I think Jack is a man of honor. And it was Forrest's wish, a very folksy kind of honest man of the woods kind of wish. Don't tell anybody where it was, because it's my favorite spot on earth. And I don't want it to become a shrine and to get trampled and to get all fucked up. That's what I think.
That's kind of the reasoning that, I'm not a big believer in the conspiracy theory myself, but it was like, it is tantalizing to think about because it's almost a little more fun if it's like, oh, you orchestrated the discovery and it was all like there's one last layer of fucking like craziness to the whole thing. But I think it actually, did end in the most natural, prosaic way you could think, which is that someone found it.
I think the conspiracy is happening now, right? And although I love and respect Shiloh, I think he's doing people a little dirty. Okay, by claiming that he's going to give answers, by claiming he's going to reveal. And if anybody on earth is going to honor Forrest Fenn's wishes. It's Shiloh. Okay. And if Forrest didn't want the location to be revealed, there's no way in hell Shiloh's going to do it. There's no way. He's got all the money he needs. Yeah, it's not going to be in the Netflix. It's not going to be anywhere. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, it's been so long now that I wonder. Yeah, I thought they would at least have had some kind of TV show or like a 3-part Netflix documentary, like detailing all this and the whole story, like that you did X marks the spot that I just laid out in 30 seconds. It's like, this is the craziest. There's a lot to this crazy story, folks. Like 4 or 5 people died. Like it was that serious and crazy. And the they had conventions and shit and all kinds of fun stuff. It was quite a scene.
Tim, we were close. We were close to that. Shiloh and I had a deal. We had a production company involved. We were about to start pitching the show, and then he backed off. I think it was maybe he wasn't expecting it to be real, like on my end. And then when it was getting real, and he was going to have to, because part of the deal
was pen to paper.
Yeah, you got to reveal everything. You have to reveal everything, or it's not worth it. And speaking to me, he was like, "Yeah, of course, everything, all will be revealed." And then when the rubber hit the road, he was like, "Well, I don't know, I might take this other deal." And then and that was it. Too bad. I think it would have been a great doc, a great American story, because Forrest was an American hero, man. He was a fighter pilot in Vietnam. Self-made man, moved out west, had no idea about the art industry, and builds this massively successful art gallery, thumbing his nose at all of the mainstream people that were doing it a different way. I mean, he was. I had a lot of respect, still do, for Forrest and what he did with his life.
Now, for this show, for The Devil Within, like I'm looking at some of these older shows, or this is like from last year, right? But I guess my question, first of all, is like, do you do your own research for this stuff, or do you have like folks? Okay, because I don't, no judgment either way. I know people who have really popular YouTube channels, and some of my friends write the shit for them, and it's like, okay, that's the business nowadays. So. I wouldn't. I got like 3 or 4 guys that write up these things, and I read them. Then I would be like, oh, okay.
No. I get a lot of suggestions on stories from people, and then I do the research and I do the writing. And the episodes aren't very long, right? They're like between 20 and 30 minutes. So I can kind of handle it. I work quick. I work from home. I have a recording studio in my house. So I could churn them out pretty quick, and I'll take like 2 weeks, and I'll bust out like 10 or 15 of these episodes, so I can have some time off and see my kids. But yeah, no, it's all me.
All right, nice. Did you? I saw one of them was the Delphi case. Have you followed the Delphi case and the Odin angle, because that's kind of right up your alley in a way?
Absolutely. I touched on the Odin angle, the Norse stuff in the episode. And didn't the guy just get convicted?
Yeah, he got convicted in October. So, or maybe early November, but somewhere around there. And was. I don't know. I'm not necessarily a believer that he was the guy, because the Odin thing is very interesting. And it just doesn't add up. It just doesn't. Something about the guy just doesn't add up. He's like tiny. He's like 5'2", and like
the crime scene.
The crime scene was so elaborate.
Really strange. Yeah, but then, God, the recording on the girl's phone in the picture, that was chilling. When he says down the hill. Yeah.
Oh no, for sure. It's
gosh. But so no, I hear you.
What came out, I don't know if you followed the trial, but what came out in the trial was like that it was a super secretive trial. That in and of itself, people are really like, that's super shady. Like they didn't televise it. I think they only allowed like 5 reporters in to cover it with pen and paper. And it came out that the video of the famous video, like he's like a tiny little speck, like in the background. And when they showed it on TV and stuff all the time, it was like super zoomed in and apparently somewhat AI enhanced, like to fill in the detail. Yeah. So it's like, oh, wait a minute. Now this guy we've been looking at for all these years, this is like kind of fucking bullshit. So I don't know. It's a very curious case.
It is. And And again, like I said, for me, it comes back to how elaborate the crime scene was, with all the iconography and all the, like there was stuff hanging from trees and everything. It was just really a little kind of scary, to be honest. And did that guy have a history of anything? Because that would come up in an investigation. And if you didn't see that in any of his past, any kind of allegiance to this kind of belief, then who did? Yeah. Right. Then, right. So that's the big question in the Delphi stuff for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very weird.
Yes.
Do you have any particular cases you're following right now that are of interest to you? I have a couple here, like Idaho 4, Karen Reed. Either of those ring a bell for you of something that
I've done? Yeah. The Karen Reed thing. She got a new trial, right?
Yeah. It's starting up. It should be starting up on April 1st or so, around the beginning of April. Yeah, it's right around my neck of the woods, so I've been following it super.
Yeah, absolutely. The Idaho 4, there was a bunch of news in that today, right? I saw a bunch of news on it that about the investigative genetic genealogy angle.
Yeah.
Right. So that was, and they're building like a scale model of the house.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. They're building a scale model of the house to be used at trial, where they could walk kind of like the jury through to show them what was what. And they're going after the death penalty for that guy.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
But no, honestly,
I think is what's the shooting one when they shoot you?
Is that what he wanted? Firing squad?
Firing squad. Yeah, in Idaho, that's they use the firing squad.
Jesus Christ!
It's wild.
Didn't know they still did that
in Idaho.
Wow. But no, so the Karen Reed thing is interesting. I'm interested in your take on the Karen Reed case. Like, what do you?
Well, I think it seems like a setup to me.
Yeah.
I have my mind open to the possibility that she may have done it accidentally, but there's so much shady stuff with like the people in the house and the cops and everything.
Yes.
Like maybe there was
broken taillight.
Yeah. Maybe there was something else going on, and they were like, look, they've been super quiet about it because something else was going on in that house that night that like they, they don't want anyone to know about. I'll let people draw their own conclusions what that might mean, but like,
sure, you get a bunch
something
of cops.
was going. Yeah, in the middle of the night, all drunk, 3 or 4 couples and various singles all hanging out at like 2 a.m, all shit-faced. God knows what's going on. And then
one of them ends up freezing to death and then getting... Yeah. But
to me, it's like, I think her cell phone connected to the Wi-Fi at the guy's house, like at the dead John's house, like at 12:30.
An elevation change.
Yeah,
right?
And there was a very small window of opportunity for her to like hit him and then get home if he hadn't. Yeah, so it's very, I'm not sold at all that she did it. So that's kind of I'd be that like a little bit open to like an accident, like that she completely missed.
Sure, but not murder.
Not any murder or anything like
Correct.
that. Like,
not murder one. Yeah.
Right.
No,
if there was any murder involved, it was the people in the
exactly. Not murder on her end, but like top murder. Right. No. So I'm halfway through. So every year I do a full season of like at least 8 or 9 episodes. And right now I'm about halfway through releasing season 4, which follows Richard Ramirez in the Night Stalker murders in Los Angeles. But right before I started that, I did an episode about an allegedly haunted video game called Polybius that showed up in arcades up in Portland, allegedly back in the 80s.
Tell me about this.
Well, it's you can never really obviously know like what's going on with it, but Polybius was a video game. The only proof that it even existed is one screenshot of the start screen. Okay. And it was allegedly in 3 arcades in Portland in like 1996. Portland, Oregon. Excuse me.
Okay. All right. No, depending on where you live.
That's a New Englander for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you're from the West Coast or West Side, then it's you're west of the Mississippi, it's Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
And allegedly, you play this game and it affects you to the point where it kind of, all right, it's a little bit of Manchurian Candidate kind of stuff. Like people are talking about MK Ultra, that this was a branch of MK Ultra to try and see if it works, right?
Like mind control. Yeah.
Mind control. And allegedly 2 kids disappeared. It's a lot of like low frequency sound and like flashing lights that apparently has some effect on your brain. But what that led me to, which I'm currently investigating and trying to actually find, in 1993, a game came out called Spirit Catcher 93 for the Nintendo, the NES, the old school gaming system. Okay.
Spirit Catcher 93.
Spirit Catcher 93. And apparently you can find copies of the game at like flea markets or garage sales, like that kind of stuff. And there are some screen grabs of some of the levels. And the story of the game is that you have to navigate through a haunted hotel. Okay. You have to defeat ghosts and goblins and shit and find a glowing key on each floor, which graduates you to the next level. And it gets increasingly more difficult with bosses on each level, like a classic Nintendo game from the 80s. Okay. But when you get to the 7th level and you beat the game, you go into a room, and for every person that plays the game, allegedly, that gets to the 7th level, that final room is different for everybody. But what is consistent is that there's a mirror on the wall in this room. And as your CPU, your character goes up to the mirror, okay, and if you stand there long enough, the mirror changes and you see a computerized version of yourself.
Oh, weird.
Who's playing the game. And then if that doesn't freak, yeah, exactly. And if that doesn't freak you out, and if you stay there long enough, the mirror shatters. And here's where it gets really weird and people shit their pants. A date shows up with a method of death that is apparently your death date.
What the fuck? Where'd you hear about this story? Where did this even come up?
I've interviewed a couple people who have apparently played it. You could find some stuff online.
What's it? Soul Catcher?
Spirit Catcher 93.
All right, so I'm gonna write this one down. All right, yeah.
So what I found was that it was apparently
it sounds like some kind of creepy pasta thing. Is this true, or is this like a internet urban legend?
Well, the game designer is apparently still alive, and it was modeled after a hotel that this guy stayed in the late 70s. Okay.
All right.
And the hotel was allegedly haunted and had strange effects on people, and tons of people have disappeared from this hotel. And, there's people think that it's like a dimensional portal, whatever. Who knows? But that's the story of Spirit Catcher 93. And I'm trying, because I'll play the fucking game. I don't give a shit. Oh, let's go. Let's see what happens. Right. But I can't.
Yeah.
I can't find. I still have my old Nintendo in my.
You can't buy it online anywhere on eBay.
No, I can't find it anywhere. Okay. So it's like it would have to be like an old school like search of thrift stores and flea markets.
Yeah.
And or you put the word out online, to people to go through their old boxes of video games.
Yeah. Well, if anyone listening knows.
Yeah, if anyone knows. So anyway, I've been working on that, but I don't really have enough for a full episode yet. So in the meantime, I like doing stuff, like go state to state. Like what's the famous cryptid from your state? What's the most haunted place in your state? What's that? And, and I travel quite a bit. So I like doing stuff that's current. Like we were in Arizona last summer. My kids are volleyball players. So there was a big tournament there. So I just walked around Phoenix and went to all the haunted spots there, which was a ton of fun. Like during the Paris Olympics, like the show moved to Paris, and it was just all ghost stories and cryptid stuff from France, which was super interesting. That I knew nothing.
Well, what kind of stuff did you uncover?
Oh God, a ton of vampire shit, like real life vampires, about like this 19-year-old kid that spent his time like in a crypt in an old like cemetery in Paris, and then would like bite women in the neck and like drink. Like really kind of strange stuff. And then there was and a lot of serial killers. A lot of European serial killers are fucked up, man. And so I did, a bunch of episodes on that. So that was a ton of fun. And then, with every holiday, I'll do stuff, like Christmas ghost stories are always a big hit, and Thanksgiving spook stories or Hanukkah stuff. So I had a lot of fun over the winter. And then it was time for season 4 about Ramirez. So, yeah.
Yeah. What made you decide to make that your centerpiece here for the season?
Well, for the previous season, I did the Son of Sam murders in New York. I like to do stuff that has a satanic or demonic possession type of angle. And with Son of Sam, that whack job thought that his neighbor's dog was possessed by a 600-year-old demon and was telling him to murder young women. So that was a really interesting angle. And then, New York in the late 70s was such an interesting time. Hip hop was new and punk rock music was new, and the city was on the decline, and so just kind of culturally and socioeconomically, there was a lot of meat on the bone there to tell a really interesting story. And that episode, that season did very well. And the Night Stalker with Ramirez is just kind of the opposite side of that coin. Just West Coast instead of the 70s, it's the 80s. With all of the trimmings of the 80s, man, in LA, the Olympics and Reagan and Heat Wave. And, it was just a couple years after the Hillside Strangler stuff. So the city was already on edge. And then here's this absolute coke addict lunatic who is just killing indiscriminately. Yeah. He has no MO that the cops, he's old, young, knives, guns, strangling, breaking in, kidnap. He was all over the map, and the cops were just baffled. And the way that they caught him was super interesting. And all of his, making his victims, vow their allegiance to Satan and carving pentagrams in their chests and drawing upside down crosses on the walls and all that. And claiming to be in league with Lucifer. That's, the takeaway from that is much like, if you were, a young English nobleman during the Crusades, right? If you think you're doing the work of a supernatural being, you're very, very dangerous. Okay. And so for Richard Ramirez or for David Berkowitz, the Son of Sam, if they honestly believed that the devil was telling them to do stuff, there's no stopping them,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. If you think you're being commanded by the devil, it's like you pretty much all
okay. I guess you got to do it. Yeah.
Did you explore the theory that Berkowitz had accomplices that never were brought to justice? What do you think of that whole theory?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so where I'm from in North Jersey, there's still a cult out in the open, right? That's operating today, where David Berkowitz is their supreme leader, I guess. I don't know. He's their
God figure.
Their Godhead. Yeah. He's like the David Koresh, or he's like their.
Oh, he's still alive, right? Yeah. So I guess he.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. He's like their Charles Manson, whatever. He's their person. And so, and then, again, it's North Jersey, so everything could somehow be blamed on the mafia, right? Mm-hmm. So were there mob ties there? What were her accomplices? What were Berkowitz's accomplices within this cult that had its origins in the mid 70s in this park up in Yonkers? And so, I got into that. I went into that a lot. In it. And I interviewed a couple of FBI agents, because the interesting thing where the mafia came into play was that was one of the few times, it wasn't unique to the FBI, but it was one of the few times where they reached out to organized crime, because people were scared to walk the streets of New York. It was hurting the mafia's business as much as it was hurting the public safety. And so FBI reached out. The Colombo crime family sent an emissary. Okay. The FBI sent someone. They sat down in this restaurant in Little Italy, and they said, all right, we align here in terms of our needs. So basically, if any of your capos or lieutenants are out there, or associates are out there on the street, and you could find this guy, do what you do, and we look the other way. And And there was one night where they almost had him in Brooklyn, where they had him kind of cornered, but he got away. And Berkowitz admits to it. He knew that he was being followed by a couple of Goombas in a Cadillac that were looking to whack the guy. Yeah, I know. So that was a real interesting kind of off ramp in the show, is the kind of the mafia connection. So, the whole Berkowitz thing, man, there's still a lot of questions there.
Yeah. Have you entertained that idea? I mean, beyond exploring it on the show. I mean, personally, what do you think of the theory?
Personally, I think, similar to with the Night Stalker stuff. Like one of the last episodes was about a sexual assault that he committed in Burbank that was attributed to him, that he copped to a trial, but that was so different from everything else. Okay. Instead of this deranged lunatic that was sweaty and disgusting and just violent and hyper aggressive. Yes, he violently raped a woman. Okay. But then afterwards, when normally he would then mutilate their body, he went, "Oh, you must be cold. Let me get you a robe." And they sat there and they chit-chatted for 20 minutes. And then he asked for directions back to the fucking freeway and let her live. Okay. So there's a lot of people in the kind of law enforcement community that don't think that Ramirez did it. And people are like, well, who gives a shit? Ramirez died in jail. Great. They're like, no, if he didn't do it, who did? There's somebody out there that we're not even bothering looking for. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so with Berkowitz, it's kind of the same thing. He was all over the boroughs, right? He was Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, Manhattan, not Manhattan, Staten Island. Like he was everywhere. And he was in his car that was registered to him like the whole time. Like he gave no thought to trying to conceal his identity. Okay. So, how would you get away with that? Because what eventually caught him was a parking ticket. Okay.
Yeah.
On the car registered to him. So that is kind of the entry point to people saying, well, he had accomplices. There were other people that were doing it and it all got pinned on him. And all of the kind of arrows point to the cult that was practicing in this park, that had these underground kind of like catacombs, where there was a lot of evidence of satanic activity and cult activity. And there was that great Netflix documentary that explored it a lot more than I did.
Yeah.
That wasn't really the angle of my show, but I would be remiss as a storyteller, to not say that there are still a lot of questions about whether or not he acted alone. If I'm pressed, I would think that he did not act alone. I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, but there's a lot of evidence that he was an MK Ultra victim from his time. Yeah. He wanted to go to Vietnam and kill people. He was a little too late and he got sent to Korea instead on the DMZ. And he was not a good soldier and he was doing LSD all the time. And he came back, and according to all the people that knew him, he came back a, quote, changed man. And then within a year, he started his killing spree.
Oh, weird. So, it could also be PTSD. You don't know. Who knows?
He didn't see combat.
Yeah, but still, I don't know. Maybe it fucks you up. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it could.
If they shipped me halfway across the world, I'd probably, I
might not take it well either.
Didn't see combat, but yeah, who knows? There's probably a lot of training, a lot of exploding and shit. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, so either accomplices, MK Ultra, demonic possession of a dog, mental disease, right? There's just really kind of terrifying. The 44.
So it seems like you like to explore these sort of overarching large classic cases. Have you for these seasonal things? Have you thought about future seasons? Because everyone loves the killer clown. Everyone loves John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah,
the nightmare clown.
That's a crazy one.
Seems like that's an inevitable one for you.
That's a crazy one. I'm kind of circling one right now that is a serial killer that no one's ever heard of, to be honest, because he existed in the shadow of Ted Bundy, where Ted Bundy was just sucking up all of the media attention.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, this guy, I would venture to guess, knew that and was almost able to act unhindered, just do whatever he wanted. And even a couple of his murders were attributed to Bundy. So I'm working on
Did he ever
that.
get caught?
Kind of and kind of not. It's a really interesting case.
Okay.
That I'm
You
gonna
haven't really
play-
laid it out yet.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Hold your cards on that. I guess.
Man, and there's another great one that doesn't, but they don't have the satanic angle, which I like. But there's a great awful one about that pig farmer up in Canada.
Yeah, I'm aware of that one. Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, that's pretty it's a gruesome one.
Feeding his victims to people at like the barn dances that he had on his property.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's another one where there's like a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding that.
Tons.
That's the whole, that like all authorities and cops in that area and various other ne'er do wells and miscreants kind of like that. It was like this guy wasn't operating in secret. I guess is the kind of
right. So unfortunately, there's a lot of stories to choose from. There's a lot of hawked up people out there that have done some terrible things,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that, there are serial killers still running around, like they say, but it's interesting how we don't really see, I guess they caught the Long Island guy, or the alleged
Long Island guy.
Yeah.
Yep,
That's like the most recent one. And then they got we know for sure, they got the East Area rapist, Golden State Killer. So
Golden State Killer, they got him through
thanks
genetic
to this
genealogy.
DNA stuff. Yeah. But you just don't see any contemporary serial killers, or I guess maybe you learn about them after the fact, but even still, it's like, not like we're hearing a lot about people from like the 90s and the early aughts, which is now like 20, 25 years ago, frighteningly enough.
I know there's nothing like the golden age of serial killers, right? From the 70s and the 80s and, into the early 90s. There's, it ended basically with like Jeffrey Dahmer, who's
have you heard the theory that the dip in serial killers is because of they took out the lead in gasoline?
Oh, no, I hadn't heard that.
It's an interesting theory, yeah. Like they somehow traced it to like whenever like they took the lead out of the gasoline, like things changed or something. I don't know.
Wow.
That's just a random tip that I had heard a while back, but I haven't looked at it.
That's really interesting. I'd love to do like a really deep dive on like Jack the Ripper, like these old school unsolved. Like we still don't know who that guy was. Like I did a 2 or 3 episode arc on the Devil in the White City. Yeah. The guy from the Chicago World's Fair who had like a murder dungeon in his house and was just.
Yeah. H.H. Holmes. Yeah.
That guy was weird and awful and evil. So, stuff like, stuff like that. I just find all of that interesting. And I wasn't that guy before. Like I wasn't expecting The Devil Within to do what it did, to be honest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's it just keeps on going. It got picked up for a 4-part doc series on all I can say is a major streaming network that's shooting right now, which is great. Yeah, I was in New York for a couple of weeks on set. It's awesome. And they're not retelling the same. Well, it's the same story, but they're not just rehashing the podcast. It's like an evolution of the podcast because a ton more people will show up for a TV show than will show up for a podcast, especially when it's mostly older people from an old case that don't even know what a podcast is. Right. So I got a lot of people said no to me when I was making the podcast that have said
that makes
yes.
sense. Yeah. Then they'll come on a TV show. Yeah. I didn't think of that.
Yeah. They've said yes to the production. So it should be a super cool show. So,
all right.
So things are plugging along.
All right, tell me about, as we head to the end here, tell me about the Somerset Swamp Monster. This is a New Jersey thing. You wrote about it recently. This feels like something you can really enlighten us to. So tell me about the Somerset Swamp Monster from your neck of the woods.
Yeah, man, I didn't even know. It's not a huge. I wish there were more of the folklore there in Central Jersey. I'm from North Jersey. Okay. Mm-hmm. Where we've got the half deer, half man creature in the woods. South Jersey and the Pine Barrens is all Jersey Devil. And Central Jersey, they've got the Somerset Swamp Monster. No, listen, I spent time in Somerset County. The 4-H club was there. I used to ride my BMX bike there. I've got friends down there. Like, if you go east, that's where Rutgers University and a lot of the shore stuff begins. But the Somerset Swamp Monster was basically an urban legend about a large creature of different people have seen different things. Is it a huge serpent, like similar to the Loch Ness kind of monster? Is it more like a bipedal kind of swamp kind of monster along the lines of I don't know, what's that old movie?
Like Swamp Thing?
Like Swamp Thing, exactly. Something like that. Some say it's horned. Some say it has scales. Some say it's got a super long tail, glowing red eyes. But I wish I had known about it when I was a kid, because every kid in Jersey at one time or another takes a class trip to the Great Swamp. It's this protected ecosystem, and there are these really cool footbridges where you walk all through the swamp. There's a swamp in my backyard growing up. There's swamps everywhere in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Springsteen sings about it, somewhere in the swamps of Jersey. Okay, great. And if I had known, it would have just made these class trips so much more exciting, because I would have just been looking for the swamp monster the whole time. But as the years have gone by, because it's a relatively new myth, it came up in the 70s. Okay, that hunters started seeing this beast in the swamps, and now it's become kind of like how a cottage industry about like Bigfoot swag has kind of popped up in places in the Pacific Northwest. T-shirts and hats, and here's where Bigfoot lives, or like Loch Ness Monster has become more commercialized than anything else. That's more where the Somerset Swamp Monster has evolved to present day. It's more cultural. It's the identity of a bunch of the small towns that border the swamp. And there's like parades and where you could buy T-shirts and hats and all of that. And but sightings have gone way, way, way down. I don't think there's been a sighting in the last like 10 years, unfortunately. So
that's a bummer.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just one of those things. It's just one of those things. I can't say yes or no, that it exists. I'm not denying people's, experiences. I just wish that there would be more of them. That's all.
Well, don't we all? Yeah,
right?
For sure.
I know.
Can I ask you briefly? So I looked you up here on your acting career. You actually have quite a long thing here on IMDb. I won't pester you too much. Can I ask you about a couple of them though?
Sure, dude. Go for it.
So you were in I'm going way back to the beginning. You were in the fucking Beverly Hillbillies with
dude,
from Ernst.
Yes.
What was that like? Did you get to, I assume you got to meet him.
The feature version.
Or were you just kind of like in a thing?
No. It was the feature version. I think I shot that, 30 something years ago. So, one of the B stories of it was, the Ellie Mae story was Ellie Mae was in high school, and I played a wrestler, obviously, funnily enough, one of the bullies. Me and two of my wrestling buddies, we would bully Morgan Drysdale all the time. And Morgan was Kevin Connolly, who went on to great fame as E in Entourage, among other things.
All right, yeah.
So my character bullied Kevin Connolly. Then eventually we all got beat up by Ellie Mae. And that was my kind of story arc. So I was on set for a couple of weeks. Yes, I got to meet Ernest. What an absolute gentleman and a classically trained Shakespearean actor. Right? Yeah,
I know. People don't know that about him.
Oh, man.
He's Ernest, but yeah. But
and he
Ernest is an icon.
Yeah, he died young, unfortunately. But what a great expand. I haven't thought about that in a long time. Thanks for bringing that up.
Well, I couldn't believe it because, you were in a lot of shows that I didn't see. But then as I go way back, then it's like, oh, you were in Black Sheep, the fucking Chris Farley movie, dude.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Same director of the Beverly Hillbillies. Cast me as on a one-day role in Black Sheep, but my scene was with Chris Farley. I got to work and spend an entire day with Farley. It was incredible. So it's the scene where where he goes on stage, where he smokes weed and goes on stage to the Rock the Vote thing. Okay. So it's before that when he's arriving at the venue and he pretends to be a security guard to kind of con his way in. Okay.
Oh Christ! I'm gonna have to pull this up on streaming tonight after this.
Right. And I play this kid who's trying to get backstage and trying to like run past him, and we get into this huge argument, and he just screams at me until smoke comes out of his ears, and he scares the shit out of me, and I run away like a little bitch.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. It was so much fun.
How old were you?
I was 24, maybe 23.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
23,
all right. So you weren't like 12 or 13. You were like grown. Yeah.
Yeah, this was the late 90s. This was 97, 98. So I was like 24, 25. Yeah. And I got to know Farley, and we hung out a little bit a couple of times after that. And then he died. Yeah. Yeah. That was tough, man. We lost an icon there when he died. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 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 Those two stood out to me because I'm like, holy shit, I've seen those movies. Wait a minute. You were in these movies I watched growing up. Not that, 93, we were probably pretty close in age as it is. So yeah.
I'm 51 now. Yeah. I'm 51.
I'm 46. So
there you go. Okay,
yeah, not too far apart.
Yeah.
The only other one here I was going to mention was Monk. Because people do like Monk. That's like pretty iconic show. You must have been you must have been like closer to 30 then when you made that one.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I played a character named Chicklet, who it was a short role, but because I die in the opening, I'm the murder victim that they kind of got to figure out what happened to me. So I have this I have a scene with an actor named Nicky Cat, who you'll probably recognize. He's a great character actor. He's been around forever. He's awesome. The funny thing about that, we were shooting at a junkyard on the kind of outskirts of Los Angeles, and they had everything kind of locked down and all. It was a huge production. It was a big show, and So the scene is, I show up. We're supposed to do kind of like a deal. We start arguing, then we get into a big fight. So we had this whole fight kind of choreographed in this little section with all these junk cars around us. And after the first take, we're sitting there and the director comes up and is talking to us. And I'm kind of sitting like this with my hand kind of on my mouth, and blood is just squirting out of my hand.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't even feel it. Somehow in that kind of fake fight, my hand caught on some jagged piece of fucking junkyard metal. Right? Yeah. Oh, Jesus. And I had to go to the hospital. I had to get a tetanus shot. I had to get all these stitches.
Yeah.
But then came back and finished the day. So I have the scar. I still have the scar on my right pinky right there. That's how I remember Monk. Yeah.
Let me just jump back to the Beverly Hillbillies. Just what is that experience like? Because that was like a major fucking motion picture. Like I had a bit part in the critically acclaimed The Hill and the Hole film alongside Adam Goraley. I just played a fried dough clerk or whatever. But so we're both from the world of Hollywood, really. If
yes, of course we are. We're Hollywood brothers. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, what
was it like? Because I mean, that was like a tentpole summer movie. They put a bunch of money in it. It was a huge fucking like dream come happening. True. It didn't do well it didn't set the world on fire, but they certainly pinned their hopes to it. And it was a big time like movie. What's it like being on the set of that? It's just crazy. Like, is it just like a frenzy around you?
Dream come true. Okay. I'm a kid from Jersey. I'd done a bunch of theater, right? Come out here. I get an agent. It was like, I'd been in town about a year and a half. It was like my fourth or fifth audition. The biggest thing that I'd ever auditioned for. It's on the Fox lot, right down on the west side. I was driving this crappy old Camaro, okay, and I go in on the audition, and it was the director. Her name is Penelope Spheris. She had directed Wayne's World, which was like the number 3 movie of the previous year. So she walked on water as far as the studios were concerned. She could do whatever she fucking wanted. Okay.
Yeah, this was a big time movie.
Huge director. So I walk in, and as I'm walking in, obviously the actor before me for a different role for one of the high school teachers was walking out. Okay. And Penelope and the casting director, as I walk in, they're not paying attention to me. They're looking out their blinds at the parking lot, and they're watching to see what car the actor was going to. Okay. And she goes, "Oh, look at that. His car's really shitty. Let's give him, he was fine. Let's give him the job." Okay. And they were like laughing. And I went, oh, really? My car's the shittier one right next to his. So you got to cast me. Okay. And we all had this really big laugh and it was cool. And then
Nice.
I did my work and then I wound up getting the job. And I remember still where I was when I got the call. It was incredible. And then, and so you go in and you have to do all of the wardrobe fitting. And I just have a smile plastered on my face the whole time. And then we're shooting at Beverly Hills High School. Okay. So we're there and I meet everybody and I have my own trailer and there's hundreds of people on the crew that are there basically for you, right? To make sure that you're comfortable, that you're rested, that you're well fed, that you're in a great creative space. And Penelope ran a very loose, very collaborative kind of set. Rehearsals were really cool. And I was super nervous. I wanted to do a great job. And my first couple of takes really sucked. And she was super cool about it and just said, go walk around a little bit, go get something to drink and hang out. No pressure. We got all day. We have nowhere else to be. This is the only scene we're doing. And really put me at ease. And Kevin Connolly is a great friend of mine, like to this day. And then interesting thing about that. So I worked for about 2 weeks. Then I had 2 weeks off and then back for another week. And we were back at the Beverly Hills High School. And my second day back, everything went on lockdown because we were awaiting a verdict in the O.J. Simpson civil trial. And they were afraid because this was only a couple years after the LA riots, after the Rodney King thing. So everyone's like, we don't know what's going to happen. And so that's one of the things I remember is being a little bit like, don't come out of your trailer. There's cops on tactical alert everywhere. So like hang out, but then nothing happened and it was great. And then we go, then there's the premiere, which was awesome. It was at the Chinese Theater. Are you fucking kidding me? The Chinese Theater.
Yeah.
Which is world famous.
Like I said, yeah. Folks,
so it was everything. Yeah. It was everything as great as you would expect. It was great.
Yeah. To date myself, it was like, this is like, on the cover of Entertainment Weekly, folks. This was like, this is the big fucking movie of the, when they do these are the movies of the summer. Here are the movies of the summer this year. Like one of them was Beverly Hillbillies. So it's like, they're only going to make that into a movie.
Yeah. And I made great friends. With the director. I'm still friends with her today. I did a couple of other films with her. She was a big supporter of my work. She would come to every play that I would do. I did dozens of plays in LA. And then I found out I could make more money writing. And so I was on a movie I got cast in a horror film in Romania in the early 2000s.
Really?
And, yeah. It was called Timber Falls. That'll be somewhere on my IMDb. And so I was in Romania for about a month and I became really close with the director of that. And he suggested that we become writing partners. And that started my writing career.
Interesting.
Within a couple of years, I was getting a lot more work as a writer than I ever did as an actor. And so 20 years later, that's what I do.
Interesting. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Do you ever get the itch to do any more acting or are you just kind of like
constantly
too busy now? Really?
Constantly. Yeah, man. There's nothing like I get the itch to be on stage again. Because you're never more scared than opening night when the lights are about to go down. Yeah. And I love that adrenaline rush. I live for it. I had so much fun. Every play that I did I have great memories of. And I keep telling we
should try some live podcasting. That's about maybe as close
right.
as you get. It's kind of electric. It is electrifying doing it live. I miss the show used to be live for many years and
really
now it's pre-taped again. And it's like, I do miss that live aspect of it. It's just fun.
The only thing that scares me more than live theater is stand-up comedy, which I could never do. I just don't have the balls for that. I have so much respect for stand-up comedians that get up there and do it. Whew, man. But live theater, dude, is the thing. I keep telling my wife, eventually I'm going to get back up there and I just haven't had time. I haven't done a play since, my first kid was 14. So the last play I did was my wife was pregnant with my first baby and it's 14 years now. So it's a bummer.
How long were you in fucking Romania for?
I was in Romania for about 7 weeks.
Wow. See, that's great, man. That's fucking awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Bucharest is a depressing place. It's a depressing place, though. It is.
I suppose. Yeah.
A lot of the oppressive kind of Soviet architecture is still there. There's a lot of stray dogs. I'm a dog guy. I wanted to rescue every dog that I saw. We got out of town.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we got out of town for a couple of weeks to shoot stuff in the woods. We were actually up in Transylvania, which is beautiful. Yeah. It's like being in Aspen, but then back to the city. Oof, not cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Reminds me of Schitt's Creek when she gets them. I don't know if you watched that show. When she gets
I did. I loved Schitt's Creek.
Horror movie in some far-flung Eastern European country. Yeah.
Yep. But their production infrastructure is vast and
sure
and robust. Yeah. You could shoot. They're shooting. There's probably 100 movies being shot there right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So.
All right. So where can people find your stuff? So they should look up The Devil Within on YouTube is where they can find.
You go to The Devil Within. Yeah. The Devil Within, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm on a new network. The network is called EVO, EVIO. And so the YouTube channel is actually EVO. But you could also navigate there by just searching The Devil Within full episodes. Will bring you right to EVO. And listen, I'd love people to check out my podcast. Check out The Devil Within from the first season. You could binge. There's 3 full seasons that you can binge, and about 100 weekly episodes. And to keep an eye out for the TV doc version of The Devil Within Q3 of this year, sometime in the fall.
There you go. And what I like about it too is it looks like they're only like half hour, 40 minutes long, which is very easily, that's very easily digestible.
Yes,
especially in this day and age.
Yeah, so it's I like to be available for your commute or when you're doing the dishes or working out. You can listen. So
there you go. All right, Branden Morgan, thank you so much for reaching out and for coming on the show. And it was fun chatting with you. This was a lot of fun.
A lot of fun, man. I really appreciate your hospitality and your genuine interest in my silly career. Thank you. That was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it, Tim. Thanks, man. And when I start doing guests again, I'd love to have you on.
Anytime, brother. You just
all right. I'm going to hold you to that. You all heard it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks again, brother. Talk soon.